The first thing Trent said after the casserole hit the table was, "Now that Elaine is gone, Dan, grieve, pack a bag, and don't come back here." He didn't whisper it. He said it like a landlord evicting a stranger. My daughter, Lily, didn't look up. She smoothed her napkin, then tapped her phone face down like it burned. It had been 7 days since the funeral. I stared at the high in our front porch where Elaine's wind chime used to hang. The hook was still there, empty. Little things carry grief better than big words. "This house isn't practical for you anymore," Trent added, carving into the meatloaf like he owned the knife, the plate, the deed, and the heir. "It's too much. We can help you transition." "Transition to what?" I asked. "Assisted living," he said. "Or a smaller place. We'll handle the realtors. It'll sell fast. Market's decent. Maine." Lily finally spoke, still not meeting my eyes. "Dad, we're just being realistic. You shouldn't be rattling around here alone." Rattling around, like I was a loose screw. "The will is in the safe," I said. "You've both seen it. Elaine and I wrote it together. This house remains in my name. There's no transfer until I'm gone." Trent smiled, like a man correcting a child. "Wills can be updated. Bank accounts can be consolidated. If you list the property now, you can lock a good price and move your cash somewhere safer." "This everyone." "Safer for whom?" I asked. "Everyone," he said, and the word sounded like meant us. I watched Lily fidget with her wedding band. When she was little, she would climb onto my lap during storms and count the seconds between lightning and thunder. Tonight, she counted the seconds between Trent's sentences and mine. "It's not just about safety," she said softly. It's boundaries." She swallowed. "You've always done everything for everyone. You enabled Mom. You're enabling me and Trent. Don't you see? If you love us, you'll let go." There it was, therapy language turned into a crowbar. Gaslighting, dressed as growth. I could almost hear Reddit typing. I set my fork down. "If this is about money, be honest." "It's about your well-being," Trent said. "But sure, if you want honesty, your checking account is a mess. You've got too many logins. We can centralize things, make sure bills get paid, streamline the bank accounts. We're already helping with your online stuff." My stomach cooled. "How would you know the state of my accounts?" Lily's phone buzzed. She flipped it, glanced, flipped it back. "Dad, we helped you after the funeral. You gave me the password so I could pay the florist. Remember?" "I remember giving you my card for the florist," I said. "Not my banking credentials." Silence. Then Trent. "Look, the longer you drag this out, the harder it gets. You sell this place, you move into something age-appropriate, we clear out the clutter, and everyone has breathing room. We'll even handle the documents. I can draft a simple letter to your attorney to amend the will." "No," I said. Lily looked up at me for the first time. Her eyes were Elaine's, but the expression wasn't. "Dad, boundaries," I said quietly. "You brought up the word. Here's mine. You don't talk to my lawyer. You don't touch my will. You don't log into my bank." Trent laughed once. "You're grieving. You're not thinking straight. This is why narcissists get away with holding people hostage. No one sets boundaries. You need help. She's into the dinner and follows. From the man trying to move me out of my home a week after burying my wife," I asked. "That's not help. That's entitlement." Lily's phone buzzed again. This time she slid it toward me like a white flag. A text thread lit the screen. Trent and Lily. A photo of my mailbox. A list. Deed, will, bank statements. Then Trent's message, time-stamped 2 hours earlier. "If he stalls, we push assisted living. He won't fight." I kept my voice even. "You made a plan." "It's just a note," Lily said, voice small. "We're scared, Dad." "About me," Trent said quickly. "We're scared about you." I stood. The legs of my chair didn't scrape. They just moved, quiet and final. "Eat," I said. "I've lost my appetite." Trent leaned back, smug. "Good. Pack a bag while you're up. We'll swing by Sunday with a realtor." "You will not," I said. He spread his hands. "What are you going to do, Dan? Call the cops? Tell them your son-in-law wants you someplace safe? You think a judge will side with a 67-year-old enabler over a young family trying to do the right thing?" I looked at Lily one last time. "This is your line, Lil. You can step back from it." Her eyes pooled but didn't spill. She nodded to him. Something inside me didn't break. It clicked. Like a safe when all the numbers line up. I walked to the hallway, opened the closet, and took my jacket from the hanger. My keys were in the pocket. The air by the door still smelled like Elaine's lavender sachet. I paused, hand on the knob. "Where are you going?" Trent asked. I opened the door. Cold October rain tapped the porch rail where Elaine's wind chime should have been. "Out," I said. "Not to pack." And I left. I didn't drive far that night. Just far enough to stop seeing my own porch light in the rearview mirror. I parked by the old library and sat there until the rain softened from accusation to whisper. I watched drops crawl down the windshield, turning the streetlights into rivers of gold. Our house had always been more than wood and nails. Elaine used to say walls absorb energy, that a home becomes who you are. Tonight, those walls were watching my family plan my exile. When I finally got home, yes, home, I refused to say the house. The silence hit like static. Elaine's coffee mug was still by the sink. Her robe, still hanging behind the bedroom door. Everything in its place except her voice. I poured myself the last inch of the bourbon she bought last Christmas and sat in my office. The folder of bills waited on the desk, a green binder labeled household paid. Elaine had teased me about keeping paper records in the digital age. I'd laughed then. Now, I was grateful. Paper doesn't gaslight you. I flipped open the binder and started scanning numbers. Tuition transfers, wedding checks, the down payment Lily swore she'd pay back. All the quiet ways I'd said I love you in dollar signs. $215,000. That's what loving my daughter had cost so far. I never thought of it as debt, until Trent spoke about my bank accounts like he had signing authority. Maybe I'd been the perfect enabler. The quiet father who bails everyone out, who accepts thank you as repayment. I'd believed helping family was virtue. Now I wasn't so sure. Because helping becomes enabling the moment gratitude turns into expectation. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the photo on my bookshelf. Lily, in her graduation gown, me and Elaine on either side of her. Proud, younger, naive, she'd once sworn. Family takes care of family. I believed her. But that phrase hits different when taking care means erasing you from your own life. I opened my laptop, hands steady for the first time in days. Years of working in credit risk analysis had trained my brain to hunt patterns. You can read people like balance sheets, what they promise versus what they actually deliver. I began sorting files, mortgage statements, joint accounts, loan guarantees. Somewhere between the tax returns and the insurance policies, my pulse slowed. The grief that had been eating me hollow crystallized into something harder, cleaner focus. I wasn't planning revenge. Not exactly. I was planning clarity. There's a difference between rage and resolve. Rage burns fast. Resolve builds pressure. At 1:47 a.m., I found a co-signed mortgage document for their house. My signature on the bottom line, dated 3 years back. They couldn't refinance without me. They couldn't even sell without my release. So they'd tried to push me out before I realized I was the linchpin in their entire financial structure. I laughed once, a sound that startled me in the quiet. Not joy, not madness, recognition. The same kind of laugh you make when you finally spot the pattern in a maze you've been walking blindfolded. On the desk lay a small, folded note in Elaine's handwriting, something she'd left in the binder years ago. Trust, but verify, it said. She'd said that every time we lent money to friends or family, trust the people you love, but verify the facts they hand you. I placed the note beside my laptop. "Thanks, sweetheart," I whispered. Because now, verification was exactly what I'd do. I wasn't going to yell, or beg, or play the wounded father. I'd spent my life believing kindness was strength. Maybe it still is, but kindness without boundaries isn't kindness. It's self-erasure. That night, I drafted a list titled, Next Steps. Contact old banking colleagues quietly. Check cosigner liabilities. Freeze digital access to all accounts. Find a lawyer who knows family finance law. When I closed the notebook, the rain had stopped. The first light of dawn slipped through the blinds, pale and unassuming. I stood, stretched, and whispered to the empty room. You wanted me gone. You just woke me up instead. And for the first time since Elaine's funeral, I felt alive. 2 mornings later, I woke up before sunrise. Old habits die hard when you've spent 35 years in banking. By 6, the house smelled like black coffee and quiet resolve. I dressed in my best Navy suit, creased, clean, still fitting, and drove into Columbus. Westerville's streets were half asleep, leaves curling in the gutters. The last time I'd worn that suit was at Elaine's memorial. This time, it felt like armor. Nate Ramirez still worked at First Central Bank, same branch, same corner office. We'd started there, fresh out of college. He'd gone management, I'd gone analysis. When I walked through the glass doors, he looked up from his desk, eyebrows lifting like he was seeing a ghost. "Jesus, Dan," he said, standing up. "You look sharper than I expected. I'm sorry about Elaine." I nodded. "Thanks, it's been rough." He poured 2 coffees without asking. Some friendships don't need words to find their rhythm again. "So," he said, sliding the mug across, "what brings you in? You're retired. You're supposed to be fishing, not hanging around spreadsheets." "I need some clarity," I said. "Family loans, cosigns, anything tied to my name. I think there are liabilities I didn't see." Nate's face changed. He'd seen that look before, the one a client gets when they realize trust has a price tag. "You co-signed something, didn't you?" "More than something. The mortgage on Lily and Trent's house. A few business loans, maybe. I just want to know where I stand." He exhaled, nodded, and opened his laptop. "Give me a few minutes. You still have your SSN memorized?" I smirked. Old bankers never forget their numbers. 10 minutes later, he swiveled the screen toward me. "Here's what's active. The Walker mortgage co-signed 3 years ago, 30-year fixed. 3 late payments, 1 reported. There's also a home equity line HELOC for $45,000, maxed out. You didn't sign that, but you guaranteed the mortgage, so your name's still exposed." My stomach tightened. $45,000? "Yep. Opened last year. Draw periods closing soon. Oh, and here, Pinnacle Construction. Business loan, 78 grand, guaranteed by one Trent Walker. Defaulted 4 months ago." Nate looked at me carefully. "You're holding a lot of paper, my friend." "Meaning?" "Meaning if those accounts go under, you could be liable for over 100 grand, depending on how the courts interpret your guarantees. Have you talked to a lawyer?" "Not yet." "Do it soon. Preferably someone who knows financial recovery law. And Dan." He hesitated, tapping the desk. "Don't tip them off yet. If they sense you're checking, they'll scramble. Maybe even move money around." I nodded slowly. "I won't. I just needed facts." "Receipts don't lie," Nate said. "People do, paper doesn't." We talked a few more minutes about logistics, credit pulls, how to request a full liability statement, but the rest was background noise. My mind was already mapping connections: mortgage, HELOC, business loan. Each thread tied back to one thing: me. When I got to the parking lot, the cold air hit like clarity. I sat in the car, watching the condensation fade from the windshield. $120,000. That's what trusting my daughter's husband had cost me so far. My phone buzzed. A text from Lily. "Dad, just checking in. We found a nice assisted living place in Dublin. They have availability this month. We can go visit on Sunday?" My thumbs hovered over the keyboard before I typed. "I'll think about it." Busy this week. Busy. Understatement of the year. By the time I got home, I had a plan forming in bullet points. The first, find someone sharp enough to navigate legal gray zones. Nate had mentioned a name: Maya Chen, financial attorney, reputation for surgical precision. I called her office before lunch. Her assistant answered. "Miss Chen's calendar's full, but she takes consultation calls for urgent financial matters." "What's this regarding?" "Family debt exposure," I said, "and boundary violations." Pause. "Boundary violations?" "Financial and emotional," I added. She chuckled softly. "That's new. Okay. Let me see what I can do." 2 hours later, my phone rang. "Mr. Carter?" The voice was calm, professional, female. "This is Maya Chen. Nate mentioned you. Said you might need someone who understands both numbers and human messes." "That's accurate," I said. "Good. Tell me everything." So I did. The dinner, the eviction speech, the text about assisted living, the forged familiarity in Trent's tone. She listened without interrupting, just the occasional clack of a keyboard. When I finished, she said, "I'll review your liability exposure first. You'll need documentation, loan numbers, statements, copies of any co-signing forms. Don't contact them yet. And Dan, start moving your primary funds out of any shared institution. Quietly. You think they'll try something?" I think desperate people always do. You'd be surprised how often family entitlement turns into fraud. Her voice had the steadiness of someone who'd seen too many good people cleaned out by those they loved. Can I ask why you took the call personally? I said. You're a partner. Most lawyers delegate this stuff. She hesitated. Let's just say I've seen what happens when good men let guilt do their bookkeeping. My father was one. For a second, I didn't know what to say. Then she added, I'll send you a secure link for uploads. We'll start there. After we hung up, I opened the green binder again. Bills, statements, receipts. Each one now felt like a brick in a wall I was rebuilding around myself. Elaine's note, trust, but verify, still sat by my laptop. I touched it like a talisman. All right, I said aloud. Let's verify, because in the end, receipts never lie. People just hope you never read them. 3 days after my meeting with Maya, my phone buzzed while I was making breakfast. It was Lily. Dad, can we talk? Her texts always came like that, short, polite, rehearsed. I replied with a simple, sure, and waited. A minute later, the phone rang. Hi, honey, I said, keeping my voice steady. Hey, Dad. She started, her tone overly bright, the kind of brightness that hides panic. I didn't wake you, did I? No, I've been up. A pause. Listen, this is hard for me to ask, but we're in a tight spot right now. Just temporary. Here it comes, I thought. We're behind on the mortgage, she said. Trent's business had some unexpected costs. We just need a little help to get back on track. $15,000 would cover the arrears and the utilities. $15,000. The same number she'd floated years ago, when temporary meant permanent. No, I said. Silence. Then, what? I said no. Dad, she laughed nervously. You don't understand. This isn't a handout. It's just a short-term thing. We'll pay you back. I leaned against the counter, watching sunlight crawl across the tile. Lily, I've given you over $200,000 in the last decade. None of it ever came back. That's not fair, she said, voice tightening. You wanted to help. We never forced you. You're right, I said. I volunteered. But volunteering doesn't mean I signed up to be your safety net forever. Why are you being like this? She snapped. You've always said family takes care of family. I still believe that, I said. But lately it feels like I'm the only one doing the taking care part. She went quiet, and then her voice softened, strategic. Dad, you've been through so much with Mom's death. You're grieving. Maybe you're just projecting. We're just trying to help you transition. Gaslighting 101 turned the victim into the irrational one. I could practically hear Trent whispering in the background. I'm grieving, I said, but not delusional. You and Trent tried to take my house. You went behind my back to access my accounts. That's not help, Lily. That's theft with better manners. Her voice cracked. I didn't, Trent. I've seen the records, I interrupted. 3 missed payments, a maxed out equity line. A business loan defaulted 4 months ago. You didn't tell me because you were hoping I'd bail you out without looking. There was a long, shaky breath on the other end. Who told you that? Receipts, I said. They tell the truth. Dad, please, she whispered. We'll lose the house. Maybe you will, I said quietly. Maybe that's what happens when you build a life on borrowed money and borrowed grace. So that's it? She said, voice trembling between anger and disbelief. You're cutting me off? After everything we've been through? No, I said. I'm not cutting you off. I'm cutting off the version of you that treats me like an ATM. Trent's going to be furious, she blurted. I'm sure he will be. But I'm done making decisions based on how he feels. Dad, I love you, Lily. That won't change. But love doesn't mean endless rescue. Love without accountability is just enabling. Dad, I was doing the Connor. She started crying, then not the soft kind, but sharp, hiccuping sobs. I wanted to reach through the phone, to fix it, to make her safe. Old instincts die hard, but I didn't. I let the silence stand. After she hung up, I sat down with my coffee and stared out at Elaine's wind chime, still waiting to be rehung. I realized I'd spent my life confusing peacekeeping with love, generosity with virtue. Was I enabling their toxic behavior all this time by being too nice? Probably. But that morning, something shifted. It was time to stop feeling guilty and start fighting back. The morning after that call, I expected to feel regret. Instead, I felt something close to relief, the kind you get after slamming a door that should have been closed years ago. I spent the next 2 days in quiet motion printing bank statements, copying loan agreements, organizing receipts into neat piles. Every number was a breadcrumb leading back to the same truth. They hadn't just taken advantage of my kindness. They'd built their lives on it. On Wednesday, I met Maya Chen in person. Her office sat above a coffee shop near downtown brick walls, old maps of Ohio, and the faint smell of espresso. She greeted me with a handshake that was both firm and patient, like she understood she was dealing with a man who'd just realized his life had been audited by betrayal. "I've reviewed your documents," she said, spreading them across the table like evidence in a courtroom. "You're exposed, Dan. Not ruined, but exposed. The key is to act fast and quietly." "How bad are we talking?" She pointed to a column of numbers. "Between the mortgage guarantee, the home equity line, and the defaulted business loan, you could be liable for roughly $120,000 if they collapse. But you have options." "Options," I repeated. The word felt heavier than it should have. She leaned forward. "Under Arizona law, co-signers have rights. You can demand disclosure of the borrower's full financials. You can freeze activity, challenge misuse, or even dissolve guarantees if fraud's involved. Most people never do that because they're too afraid of upsetting family." I smiled weakly. "I guess I've already upset them." "Good," she said. "That means you're finally setting boundaries. The emotional kind and the financial kind. They go together." We spent the next hour building a roadmap. File for financial disclosure, move my liquid assets to a separate institution, revoke any shared online permissions, and prepare a written request for liability clarification. Maya drafted each letter while I watched her type efficient, composed, surgical. She didn't just see numbers. She saw patterns of manipulation. "People like your son-in-law," she said, "use guilt the same way they use credit. They borrow until the person lending finally breaks." "That sounds about right," I said. "I guess I've been financing their denial." She gave a half smile. "Then it's time to collect." By the time I left her office, the air outside felt sharper. The clouds had thinned, the light stronger. For the first time in months, I wasn't walking around, reacting, I was planning. That afternoon, I called Nate again. "Do me a favor," I said. "Run an informal check on the credit pulls for the Walkers in the last 30 days. "Sure thing," he said. "But you should know, Trent's been shopping for loans everywhere. First Central, SunTrust, a couple of online lenders. All declined. Debt to income's north of 60%. So he's drowning, completely. And Dan, if you make one quiet phone call to any lender they try next, mentioning risk exposure, that'll close every remaining door. You wouldn't even have to lie." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. That night, I sat on the porch with Elaine's wind chime in my hand. The metal rods were tangled, but still intact. I untwisted them slowly, letting them catch the breeze again. They made a single clear note, a small sound, but certain. In my notebook, I wrote 3 words. "No more rescues. This is a rough." Underneath, I added Maya's phrase. "Boundaries are leverage, and in banking, leverage is everything." By Friday, everything was in motion. Maya had filed the disclosure requests. The banks had confirmed my separation of assets. And Nate had quietly spread word through his network about Trent's unstable accounts. I hadn't lifted a finger beyond signing a few documents. It felt strange retaliation without rage, justice by procedure. When you work in finance long enough, you realize something important. Systems don't collapse from emotion. They collapse from paperwork. I spent the morning at the public library downtown, a place I'd barely visited since retirement. There's something comforting about rows of people silently researching their own battles. Divorce filings, tax records, business permits. Every table was a quiet war. Mine was no different. Using the county database, I pulled up Desert Ridge Construction LLC, Trent's company. The numbers were worse than Nate had predicted. 3 outstanding contractor liens, 2 late insurance payments, and a pending workers' comp claim. It wasn't just struggling, it was bleeding out. I printed every public document that mentioned his business. Permits delayed, licenses under review. A small note buried in a safety audit. Incomplete compliance documentation pending reinspection. That one line could freeze his projects for weeks. I sent the PDFs to Maya with a short message. Found some weak spots, sharing for due diligence. Within an hour, she called. Dan, this is gold. All public, all verifiable. You're not sabotaging him, you're just making sure the right people do their jobs. That's a polite way to put it. 9. She laughed softly. Professional due diligence can look a lot like karma. That afternoon, she made a few calls legal, measured, nothing that crossed any lines. She'd phrase it like, I represent a cosigner with exposure concerns regarding Desert Ridge construction. We'd appreciate confirmation that safety protocols and bonding are current. No breed and attend. Those kinds of questions don't accuse anyone. They just plant seeds of scrutiny. By Monday morning, the ripples had started. The city's inspection department scheduled a routine review. The bonding company sent a notice requesting proof of insurance continuity, and 2 suppliers, ones he already owed, paused their deliveries until documentation cleared. Trent's cash flow wasn't just tight now, it was suffocating. I knew because Nate texted me updates in his usual blunt style. Your son-in-law's company just hit a compliance check. 2 projects delayed. Guess someone asked smart questions. 1. Also, he's furious. Stormed into the bank this morning asking who leaked info. You good? Cried. I was more than good. I was calm. It's funny, people think revenge feels like fireworks. But this was quiet satisfaction. Watching the machine correct itself. No shouting, no chaos. Just accountability finding its mark. That evening, I sat at my desk with a scotch and reread Elaine's note. Trust, but verify. She would have approved of this version of me, controlled, deliberate, not cruel but finally fair. As the sun dipped below the trees, I opened my laptop one more time. The inbox had a new message from Maya. Update. The compliance review is formal. City inspectors start tomorrow. Once the report is public, his bonding company will freeze his account until resolved. You're officially in the clear. They can't touch your assets. I exhaled slowly. Relief wasn't the right word. It was more like equilibrium returning after a long imbalance. Elaine's wind chime sang softly through the open window. One note after another. Steady and unhurried. I didn't need to say anything out loud. The air already understood. Sometimes, the most effective revenge is simply letting a broken system do what it was built to do, when someone finally feeds it the truth. By Tuesday, the silence had turned heavy, the kind that tells you someone's world is unraveling. I didn't have to guess whose. News travels fast in a town like ours. Especially when a contractor's truck stops showing up at job sites. That morning, Nate sent a single-line text. Desert Ridge construction equals frozen accounts. It was the cleanest obituary I'd ever read. Around noon, I drove past Lily and Trent's place at Austin Park Apartments. It wasn't spying, not really. I just wanted to see the reality behind the lies. Their shiny SUV sat in the parking lot, hood up, a puddle of coolant spreading beneath, a metaphor on 4 wheels. Lily stood on the curb, phone pressed to her ear, pacing in frantic circles. Even from the car, I could hear fragments, words like foreclosure, extension, and I don't know what to tell them, Trent. I parked across the street and watched from a distance. It wasn't pride that kept me there. It was confirmation. Every action has a half-life, and theirs had finally reached 0. Inside the apartment, through the open blinds, I could see shadows moving fast. Trent's arms slicing through the air. Lily's smaller shape retreating, then advancing again. They were fighting. The kind of argument that burns through oxygen. For years, I'd imagined her home as safe. I'd paid for that safety. Now I saw what it really was. A panic bunker built out of denial and debt. By mid-afternoon, my phone started buzzing calls, then texts, all from Lily. I let them ring out. When I finally looked, the messages scrolled like confession notes. Dad, please pick up. It's bad. Trent lost another project. They're saying we could lose the house in 6 days. I don't know what to do. I read them all, then set the phone face down. Because the old me, the one who rescued, who forgave before the apology he would have driven straight over, checkbook in hand. The man I was becoming just sat there, letting silence do the talking. Around 5 p.m., the sky cracked open with a light rain, the kind that smells like fresh concrete. I stayed in the car and watched as Trent stomped out of the apartment, slammed the door, and drove off fast. Lily followed him onto the porch, shouting something I couldn't hear. Then she sat down on the steps and covered her face. I should have felt triumphant, I suppose. But watching your child break isn't victory, it's consequence. Still, consequences matter. For once, they weren't mine to bear. When I got home, I stood on the porch for a long time. The wind had picked up again. and Elaine's chime whispered above me, light, forgiving, steady. For years I'd thought mercy meant rescuing people from pain, but maybe mercy sometimes meant letting them finally feel it. They showed up on Wednesday evening, just as the sun dropped behind the maples. I saw their car pull into the driveway, slow, hesitant, headlights cutting through the early dusk. For a moment, I almost didn't answer the door. But then I thought, if you spend years being underestimated, you earn the right to set the stage for your own confrontation. When I opened the door, Lily looked 10 years older. Trent, on the other hand, looked like a man whose confidence had been repossessed along with his contracts. He still tried to stand tall, but his posture was all pretense, shoulders squared, eyes down. "Dad," Lily said, her voice fragile. "Thank you for seeing us. Now they 100B Fellman." "I didn't invite you," I said evenly, stepping aside. "But you're here. Come in." They followed me into the living room. I took my usual chair, the one next to Elaine's empty seat. They sat opposite me on the couch like two kids waiting for the principal. For a minute, no one spoke. The house hummed softly, the only sound the slow tick of the wall clock. Finally, Trent cleared his throat. "We've had some setbacks," he said. "Business has been rough. Clients bailed, projects delayed, and now the bank froze your accounts," I finished. His head jerked up. "How did you—" "I still know people," I said simply. "It's a small town." Lily clasped her hands. "Dad, we're in serious trouble. We know we messed up. We said awful things." Trent was stressed. "Don't," I interrupted. "Don't blame stress. You made choices. You lied. You weaponized my grief. Let's call things what they are." Tears filled her eyes. "You're right, I was wrong. I should have defended you." "Should have?" I asked. "Or could have, but didn't." Trent leaned forward, palms open. "Look, I made mistakes, okay? I shouldn't have said what I said at dinner. I was angry. But you've made your point, Harold. Dan." I smiled faintly. "You can call me Harold. You seem to prefer talking to me like a client." He shifted in his seat. "Fine. Harold, we came because we need help. 40,000 would buy us time to catch up. Get the company running again." 40,000, I repeated. "You think my money will fix your pattern?" He frowned. "We'll pay you back. You can take the house as collateral." "The same house I already co-signed and funded." Trent's jaw clenched. "You're really going to hold that over us?" "No," I said. "I'm going to hold you accountable." Lily reached for my hand but stopped halfway. "Dad, please. We've lost everything. We can't get another loan, not even a credit line. Everyone's turning us away." I rose from my chair and walked to my desk. The manila folder I'd been waiting to use sat ready organized, labeled, "Complete." I placed it on the coffee table in front of them and flipped it open. "This," I said, "is a timeline of your last 18 months. Every loan, every missed payment, every false statement you made under my name. You defaulted on $78,000 in business debt, fell behind 3 months on the mortgage, and drained a $45,000 equity line without my consent." Trent's face drained of color. How did you get all that?" "As co-signer, I'm legally entitled to it. And because I'm smarter than the old fool you took me for." He glared at me, but there was fear behind the anger. Lily's voice shook. "You planned this. From the moment you told me to pack my bags," I said. "Every contact, every report, every phone call was part of what I do best, analysis. You wanted to remove me from my home. I removed you from your illusions." Trent's fist hit the couch cushion. "You destroyed our reputation, our business, our marriage. Your marriage destroyed itself," I said quietly. "You built it on deceit and entitlement. I just stopped underwriting it." The silence that followed was thick and endless. Lily began to cry softly, one hand covering her face. Trent sat rigid, jaw twitching, eyes darting like a trapped animal. After a long pause, I leaned forward. "Now that we're all honest, we can discuss terms. But not until you understand one thing. This was never revenge. It was accountability. You mistook my kindness for weakness. That was your first mistake. Assuming I'd never fight back was your last." No one spoke after that. The clock ticked, the chime outside whispered, and for the first time in years, I felt something close to peace. I had taken back the power they'd stolen, and I hadn't raised my voice once. They came back 2 days later. I knew they would. People like Trent and Lily always circle back once denial wears off and survival instincts take over. That's when the bargaining begins. When the doorbell rang, I didn't move right away. I let them wait 10 seconds, maybe 15. It's amazing how long that can feel when you've lost all leverage. Lily's voice was small when I finally opened the door. "Dad, can we come in?" I nodded toward the living room. You remember the way. They sat on the same couch as before, but something was different now. The arrogance had evaporated. Trent's shirt was wrinkled, his eyes hollow. Lily clutched a notebook like a lifeline. I stayed standing, hands in my pockets. She started first. "We've been thinking about what you said, about accountability." "Good," I said. "Thinking is free." Trent shot her a look, then cleared his throat. "We're willing to do whatever it takes. You name the terms. We'll agree." 2. I walked to my desk and picked up a small envelope. Inside was a single check already written, folded neatly. I placed it on the table between us. "This," I said, "is $25,000. Enough to stop the immediate bleeding, not enough to make you comfortable." Lily's eyes widened. "You'd really help us?" "I said I'd consider it," I replied. "But it comes with conditions." Trent leaned forward, cautious. "What kind of conditions?" "The kind that rebuild responsibility," I said. "First, a written apology. Public. You'll post it on your social accounts and submit it to the Austin Park Community Newsletter. It should include 3 things: acknowledgement of how you treated me, responsibility for your actions, and a statement that I did nothing wrong." Trent scoffed. "You want us to humiliate ourselves?" "I want honesty on record," I said evenly. "You did the damage publicly, you'll repair it the same way." Lily squeezed his arm. "We'll do it," she whispered. I continued. "Second, from now on, all major financial decisions you make go through me until your debts are settled. That means budgets, loan applications, credit cards. Transparency isn't optional. That's control," Trent said. "No," I corrected. "That's oversight. Control is what you tried to do when you told me to pack my bags. This is consequence." He looked away, jaw tight. "Third," I said, "you'll both start therapy together and separately. You'll learn what manipulation looks like and how to stop confusing love with dependency." Lily nodded slowly. "That sounds fair." "Fourth," I said, lowering my voice, "you'll treat me with respect. No more lectures about my age, no more gaslighting about grief. If you can't speak to me like an adult, the conversation ends." Trent exhaled sharply. "Fine. Whatever it takes." I pushed the envelope closer to them. "You'll get this tomorrow, after the apology is published." Lily picked it up, holding it like it might vanish. "Dad," she whispered. "Thank you. I know we don't deserve it, but thank you." I gave her a small nod. "I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it because Elaine would have wanted me to act with integrity. But don't mistake integrity for softness. This is your last bridge." As they stood to leave, Trent hesitated. "Harold," he stopped himself, correcting. "Mr. Mitchell, what if we can't fix this?" "You can," I said, "but only if you finally stop trying to win." When the door closed behind them, the house was quiet again. I sat in my chair, staring at the space where Elaine used to read in the evenings. For the first time in years, the silence didn't ache. It felt earned. An hour later, my phone buzzed. A notification. Lily Mitchell public post. I opened it. Her words were simple, raw, and real. "Sometimes the hardest thing is admitting you were wrong. I hurt the person who loved me most and forgot what gratitude looks like. Dad, this is for you. I see it now. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start." I poured myself a scotch, raised the glass to the wind chime outside, and whispered, "One lesson at a time, Elaine. One lesson at a time." A month passed before I saw them again. Not by accident, by design. Boundaries only work when you protect them. And for once in my life, I was protecting mine. The first weeks after our confrontation were quiet. Too quiet. Almost unnerving. I'd wake up expecting a call, an apology, a plea, maybe even a relapse into manipulation. But the phone stayed silent. My mornings became simple rituals: coffee, the newspaper, watering Elaine's roses, letting the wind chime speak for both of us. Then, one Saturday, a letter arrived. Real paper, real ink, no texts, No guilt-laced paragraphs typed at midnight, just a handwritten note in Lily's familiar script. Dad, we're following through with everything. Counseling twice a week. Trent picked up a job with a new company, smaller, steady pay. We've sold the house and moved into a rental. I know you warned us this would happen, but living smaller feels lighter somehow. I'm still learning to tell the difference between love and obligation, between generosity and dependence. I don't expect forgiveness yet, but I wanted you to know we're trying. Love, Lily. I read it 3 times, not because I didn't believe her, but because it felt different. For once, she wasn't performing remorse, she was living it. A week later, I ran into Maya downtown. She looked as sharp as ever, crisp blazer, calm energy, eyes that seemed to read everything before you said a word. So, she said, how's the reconstruction project going? Quiet, I told her. For once, I'm not the emergency contact for someone else's chaos. She smiled. That's progress, Dan. You've stopped mistaking guilt for love. Most people never do. I hesitated. You ever get tired of watching people destroy themselves financially? All the time, she said. But sometimes they rebuild. My mom did. After years of being controlled by someone who called it love. I looked at her. That's why you took my case. She nodded. It wasn't about the paperwork. It was about closure for both of us. That night, I sat outside under a sky thick with stars. The kind of quiet that used to feel lonely now felt earned. I thought about what she'd said about closure and realized something. Revenge was never the goal. Balance was. Trent and Lily hadn't just learned a lesson about money. They'd learned one about power. So had I. Power doesn't come from control, it comes from clarity. From knowing where you end and someone else begins. A few days later, my phone buzzed with a text from Lily. Dad, would you like to come over for dinner next week? Nothing fancy, just us. I stared at the screen for a long time. A year ago, I would have said yes without thinking, eager to prove I was still needed. But this time, I waited. Not out of spite, out of peace. Finally, I replied, let's see, I'll let you know. It wasn't a no. It was something better, a maybe that belonged entirely to me. That weekend, I walked through Elaine's garden, pruning the roses. Some branches were dry, brittle, beyond saving, but others had grown new buds, small and defiant, stretching toward the light. I whispered to her picture inside my wallet. You'd like this version of me, wouldn't you? The one who finally learned that forgiveness doesn't mean surrender. The chime above me sang again, soft, steady, unbroken. I don't know if Lily and Trent will fully recover. Maybe they'll relapse. Maybe they'll fall apart again. But that's not my story to carry anymore. My chapter ends here with order restored, lessons learned, and peace that doesn't depend on anyone else's approval. As I turned to go inside, I realized something small but profound. Justice isn't always about winning. Sometimes it's about finally putting down the burden of being everyone's savior. For the first time in years, I closed the door not on them, but on the version of myself who didn't know how to say no. And for once, the silence that followed wasn't punishment. It was freedom. It's strange how peace doesn't make a sound when it finally arrives. You expect a moment, a loud crescendo, some kind of cinematic closure, but it just slips in quietly, like a well-mannered guest who doesn't need to announce itself. A few months had passed since that last letter from Lily. Life had settled into a rhythm that felt both unfamiliar and right. I still woke early, brewed my coffee, read the paper, but the heaviness that used to follow me through the morning was gone. For the first time in years, my thoughts belonged entirely to me. I'd started volunteering twice a week at the local financial literacy center. Most of the people who came in weren't reckless or lazy, they were just misled. Couples arguing over debt, widows tricked by relatives into bad investments, parents signing loans they didn't understand. Every story felt like a reflection of mine, just in different costumes. There was one woman, about my age, who came in trembling with a foreclosure notice in her hand. My son said he'd take care of the paperwork, she told me, but it turns out he borrowed against the house. I didn't say much. I just handed her a pen and said, let's fix it. It wasn't revenge anymore, it was prevention. Helping people like her meant my story wasn't wasted. Every signature, every piece of advice, was one less person falling into the same trap of misplaced trust. One afternoon, as I was packing up, Maya stopped by. She leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, a knowing smile on her face. You're staying busy, she said. Idle hands, I replied. Besides, this feels better than vengeance ever did. Funny thing about justice, she said. Sometimes the real kind doesn't happen in court or in headlines. It happens when someone refuses to repeat the same mistake. Guess I'm living proof. Guess you are, she said, smiling softly. You should write this down someday. People forget that taking back your life isn't always loud. That night, I found myself at my desk again. The same one where this all began. The same lamp, the same creases in the wood. But everything else was different, especially me. I took out Elaine's photo and set it beside a fresh page. Her eyes still had that spark, the one that made you feel seen without saying a word. I started writing not a confession, not a report, just reflections. Lessons, maybe. 1. Love isn't measured by how much you give. It's measured by what you're willing to stop giving when it's being misused. 2. Boundaries aren't walls. They're doors with locks and you decide who gets the key. 3. Sometimes, silence is the loudest form of power. I didn't know if anyone would ever read it. Maybe Lily one day. Maybe no one. It didn't matter. The act of writing it was enough. Around midnight, the phone buzzed with a new message. It was from Lily. Dad, I wanted to tell you, Trent and I are separating. It's amicable, and we're both getting therapy. I'm working part-time at the credit union now. Thank you for not giving up on me when I gave up on you. I read it twice, then once more. I didn't feel triumph or sorrow, just a deep, quiet pride. She was learning what real accountability looked like. I typed back only one sentence. I never stopped believing you'd find your balance. Before going to bed, I opened the window. The night was still, the air heavy with the smell of rain and jasmine. The wind chime swayed gently, its tones softer now, more distant but still there. I realized something as I stood there. Justice wasn't about watching others fall. It was about finally standing where they can't reach you anymore. Elaine used to say, forgiveness isn't about them. It's about freeing space for better things to grow. As I turned off the lamp, I whispered, you were right, as always. The house was silent again, peaceful, deliberate, alive. And this time, I didn't feel alone inside it. Spring came early that year. The snow melted faster than usual, revealing the first green shoots along Elaine's garden fence. I used to dread the changing seasons. It meant time was moving without her, but this year, it felt like something different. Renewal, not absence. I was sitting on the porch one morning when a familiar car pulled into the driveway. Lily stepped out, alone. She looked nervous but grounded, the way people do when they've finally started carrying their own weight. She waved before I could speak. Don't worry, she said with a half smile. No money talk today. I laughed. Good. The bank's closed anyway. She joined me on the steps. We sat in silence for a while, listening to the wind chimes sway in the soft breeze. She used to hate silence, always filling it with excuses or noise. But now, she seemed comfortable with it. That told me everything I needed to know. I wanted to tell you in person, she said. Trent and I finalized the separation last week. No drama, just peace. I nodded. That's a good word for it. She looked at the garden, where the first roses were starting to bloom. I'm not proud of how I treated you, Dad, but I think I understand now what you were trying to teach me. Boundaries aren't rejection. They're love with structure. That's one of Elaine's lines, I said softly. Lily smiled. I remember. She used to say that whenever I pushed curfew, I just never realized she meant it about life, not just rules. For the first time in years, her voice didn't tremble when she mentioned Elaine. There was no guilt, no deflection, just quiet acceptance. I've been volunteering at the shelter, she continued, helping women get back on their feet after bad relationships. Some of them, they sound like me, like who I was. That's a good place to start, I said, turning regret into something useful. She nodded. Maya stopped by the shelter last week, actually. She told me you've been helping people too. She did, huh? She said you're teaching financial literacy to retirees, using what you went through to protect others. I shrugged. If you survive a fire, you may as well teach people how to build a better exit plan. That made her laugh. It was small, but real. She reached into her bag and handed me a small envelope. Inside was a photo, her standing in front of a modest 2-bedroom rental, holding a new set of keys. Her smile wasn't forced this time. My own place, she said. Nothing fancy, but it's mine. Every bill in my name. Every mistake, too. I studied the photo for a long moment. "It's beautiful," I said finally, "because it's honest." "Bye." She looked at me then, really looked. "Thank you for letting me fall apart, and for not rescuing me. You gave me back my dignity by taking away my excuses. That wasn't easy," I admitted. "Watching you struggle, it nearly broke me. But sometimes love has to stand back so truth can step forward." She nodded, eyes glistening. "Mom would have been proud of you." That one landed deep. I didn't reply, just smiled and let the breeze carry the weight of it away. Before she left, Lily turned at the bottom of the steps. "You know," she said, "that wind chime sounds different now." I tilted my head. "How so?" "It doesn't sound lonely anymore. It sounds free." She drove off, and I stood there for a long while, watching the dust settle along the gravel path. The air was soft and warm, carrying the faint scent of roses and rain. For years I thought justice meant retribution, but maybe it really meant restoration. Not to punish, but to rebuild what was lost: integrity, balance, peace. Inside the house, I poured 2 cups of coffee out of habit and set one beside Elaine's photo. Old rituals don't die, they just find new meanings. "Full circle," I whispered. "We did it." The chime answered softly, steady and sure. And for the first time in a long, long time, everything felt whole again. If there's one thing this whole ordeal taught me, it's that protecting your peace isn't selfish, it's survival. For years, I thought being generous made me a good father, a good man. I mistook enabling for love and silence for kindness. But silence only empowers the wrong people. Setting boundaries doesn't mean you've stopped caring. It means you finally care enough about yourself to stop letting others drain you dry. The biggest lesson I learned is that no is a complete sentence. You don't need to justify it, soften it, or apologize for it. When you start saying no to manipulation, guilt, and entitlement, you're really saying yes to your sanity, your dignity, and your freedom. I also realized that accountability is the purest form of love. You can forgive someone and still hold them responsible. You can care deeply and still walk away. In fact, sometimes the only way to heal a broken relationship is to stop letting it break you. Now, when I look back at what happened with Lily, with Trent, with myself, I don't feel anger anymore. I feel clarity. Justice didn't come from revenge. It came from reclaiming control over my own story. So, what do you think? Was I wrong for cutting them off until they learned their lesson? Have you ever had to deal with an entitled family member who crossed your boundaries? Share your thoughts or your own story in the comments. I'm curious how others handled their version of family debt. Because if there's one universal truth I've learned, it's this. Peace of mind is the best investment you'll ever make, and it always pays back with interest.